Hello, my name is Alexei. It's a part 8 of Book of Daniel, and I am on chapter 11. If you have not been following, it's pretty much I'm doing specifically focusing on the verses within Daniel that it talks about prophecies. So, kind of the background of how I came up with this interpretation. I was actually taking Greek classes on Preply. Highly recommended if you want to learn real Greek, not the fake Erasmus Greek. Preply.com. Check it out. You can also learn Hebrew and bunch other languages, so bunch other skills on it. Highly recommended. But uh, in it, there was one Greek tutor. She actually knew some history, and I was kind of curious about history, and I was like, hey, what did happen um, after Alexander the Great? And I had this class, and while I had this classes, actually not just one class but multiple classes, I was studying Book of Daniel, and a friend of mine, he asked me like, "Hey, can we go over the Book of Daniel?" I was like, "Bro, after what's called Darius and the story of about Daniel being cast into the den of lions," I was like, "I have no idea what's going on." However, during uh, the Greek classes about the four kingdoms, how one kingdom became four kingdoms, one Alexander the Great's kingdom spread out in four kingdoms. Um, go in four kingdoms. I was like, wait, that sounds very similar to what's going on in Daniel. And then I was like, studied some history, like about Roman history, how there was in the beginning of Rome seven kings, and then became a republic, and then there was a first triumvirate, and then a second triumvirate, and out of second triumvirate there was the first emperor Augustus, Caesar Augustus, and I was like, wait, that's once again similar to Daniel. So pretty much in order to understand, in my opinion, Book of Daniel properly, you have to study um, pretty much Persian history, Roman history, and Greek history, specifically up to the first century of dominion of Christ, A.D. after Christ. So, if you study Persian, well, there was no there was no longer Persian after Greeks conquered it, but Persians were under dominion of Greeks, and then after Alexander the Great died, there was four kingdoms, and then Romans, slowly but surely, they became a power, and then they also took over the world. So, in my opinion, that's what predominantly, not everything, but predominantly is the Book of Daniel about, and I would also say that it has nothing to do with the second coming of Christ. So, let's begin. So, chapter 11. By the way, I got this one out of different, I would say, Puritan slash um, pre Darby, pre Schofield pre Schofield, pre Darby commentaries that who were not polluted by Left Behind series and bunch of other nonsense stuff. Because in my opinion, like being a Christian for many years now, um, Left Behind and bunch of other dispensational garbage polluted my mind, which I think kind of to some degree prevented me to understand Book of Daniel. So let's begin. Daniel chapter 11, verse 1. In the first year of Darius the Mede, I rose to be of assistance and protection for him. By the way, if you followed, you always want to check when is the first year of Darius the Mede. If you noticed, this book is not in order, like especially the older prophecies are not in order. So we look it up and we find out that Darius, the third Persian emperor, he became a ruler at 550 BC. Verse 2. And now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings going to arise in Persia. Then 4th will be far more richer than all of them as soon as his Xerxes first, I would say, as soon as he becomes strong through his riches, he will stir up the entire empire against the realm of Greece. And I don't know if you heard about 300 Spartans, Xerxes marching whole army against Greece. And watch. So you have Darius. Then after Darius we have what's his name? Darius the Mede. Then where's this guy at? So I'm just trying to get this. So reigned, and then the next was King of Persia. Succeeded. Where is it? But pretty much. Let me see. Darius first, then. Where is it? Maybe they have some kind of Persian kings timeline. So we have Persian kings timeline, and kings. Okay, Persian kings in the Bible. So we have Darius, name Darius, Xerxes, Artaxerxes. Where is it? Xerxes the first, not mentioned. Artaxerxes. Okay, Artaxerxes. Okay, Darius and Artaxerxes. So sometimes the names. Oh, here we go. So Darius. I wish they would have like. Here we go. Maybe they do have here. There we go. Darius, Xerxes, Artaxerxes, and as far as I remember, that's they'll not let you see it for free. Captures Babylon after Cyrus dies. After Cyrus dies, Persian Wars, leading common long, including Xerxes and Artaxerxes. I wish they would have kings and stuff, but 4 great kings of Persia. Anyway, there's tons of materials you can find. There's tons of materials you can find and check out timeline. So continue on. So Xerxes first becomes strong through his riches. He will stir up the entire empire against the realm of Greece, and a mighty king, I would say Alexander the Great, I'm sure most of you guys know this guy, Alexander the Great. Um, will arise and he will rule with great authority and do as he pleases. But as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom will be broken up and uh, parceled out toward the 4 points of the compass. 4 Greek kingdoms. There we go. It's 4 Greek kingdoms. There we go. So we have 4 Greek kingdoms. The interesting part about those four Greek kingdoms is that even in Greece, they don't in high schools or middle schools they don't really teach that, because most of the kings, not all of them, but most of the kings were either thinking about being gods themselves. Either they would have to kill their father, or they have to kill their brother, or sometimes they have to marry their sister, or marry what's my mother. Like for example, the Cleopatra the Seventh, the last Cleopatra that most of everybody knows about Cleopatra. They even have a movie about her. Actually, she was married to two of her brothers. So it's pretty much crazy relationships and crazy dealings within those 4 kingdoms. Continue on. So verse, yeah. But as soon as he has arisen, referring to Alexander the Great, his kingdom will be broken up and parsed out toward the 4 points of the compass, through not on his own descendants, nor according to his authority, which he wielded, because his sovereignty will be removed and given to others besides them. So we have the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt, the Seleucid kingdom, the empire. Then we have Attalid dynasty of the kingdom of Pergamon and Macedonian. There we go. Those are 4 kingdoms right there. Verse 5. Then the king of the south. Who is the king of the south? I would say Ptolemy. King of the south. Let me actually show you guys. Might as well. I mean, you can actually just Google it yourself. Ptolemy. There we go. Ptolemy the first Satyr. Satyr means a savior, because I think he saved the what's called Greek empire from totally collapsing, even though it was broke up in 4 pieces. Research it yourself. Then the king of the south, Ptolemy, king of Egypt, will grow strong along with one of his princes, who will gain ascendancy over him and rule. His dominion will be a great realm indeed. And interesting thing is that the preceder and the successor, that's Ptolemy the second. So the son, his son. Continue on. Verse 6. And after some years, they will form an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south, and we are, I would say, like I said, from a long research, like for a couple of months I was listening at least 2 or 3 messages, like 2 or 3 hours a day, about different person, about different kingdom, about different time period of pretty much like I would say, starting from Alexander the Great, like 6th century BC, till pretty much the first coming of Christ, or I would even say a little bit farther, like 70 AD or 132 AD as well, which we'll talk about later on. But the point is this, that it was almost so hard for me to put this together. I did rely upon some of the commentators. So, like I said, continue on. Along one of his princes who will gain ascendancy over him and rule him, his dominion will be a great realm indeed. And after some years, they will form an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south, it's Bernice, the daughter of Ptolemy, Philadelphus, will come to the king of the north. It's Antiochus Theos. By the way, like lots of the names, like Theos means God, like, so they would give themselves like savior or God or bunch of goddesses. They would give themselves names like that to reach an agreement, but she will not keep her position of power, nor will he remain with his power, but she will be given up along with those who brought her in and the one who fathered her, as well as he who supported in those times. So let's Google them. Or we can do this. Ptolemy. So Bernice. So there we go. Seleucid queen over here. There we go. If you want more about her, you can find it on internet. But she will not. Okay, keep the who fathered her. The Bernice, the daughter of Ptolemy, Philadelphus, will be given in marriage to Antiochus Theos, thinking by this affirming that Assyria and Egypt would have a continual peace together. But verse 7, but one of the descendants of her line will arise in his place, and he will come against their army and enter the fortress of the king of the north, and he will deal with them, prevail. Ptolemy ever getters, after the death of his father, Philadelphus, would succeed in the kingdom, being of the same stock that Bernice was. So we Google this name, copy. So we have this guy right there. We can read about him. Verse 8. And he will also take into captivity to Egypt their gods with their cast metal images and their precious vessels of silver and gold, he and he on his part will refrain from attacking the king of the north for some years. Then the latter will enter the realm of the king of the south, but will return to his own land. And his sons will mobilize and assemble a multitude of great forces, and one of them will keep on coming and overflow the path so that he may wage war up to his fortress. So Seleucus and Antiochus the Great, the sons of Calinius, will make war against Ptolemaic Philopater, lover of father, the son of Philadelphus. Verse 11. And the king of the south, this is Ptolemy Philopater, who succeeded Ptolemy Euergetes in the kingdom of Egypt, will be enraged and go out and fight with the king of the north. Then later will arise a great multitude, but that multitude will be handed over to the former. When the multitude is carried away, his heart will be haughty, and he will cause tens of thousands to fall. Yet he will not prevail, for the kingdom of the north will again raise a greater multitude than the former, and after an interval of some years he will press on with a great army and much equipment. Now, verse 14, now in those times many will arise up against the king of the south, the violent ones among your people. Like, notice, violent ones among your people will rise themselves up to fulfill the vision, but they will fall down. So some kind of unsuccessful fight. So let's see verse 14. By the way, if you don't have eSword, that's a really good tool. You can download interlinear Bibles and commentators, and seems like for not only Philip the king, but for other ones who falsely allege the place certainty of the Jews with him into Egypt to fulfill this prophecy. Also, so hold on, let's see. So yeah, once again, I just shown you because it's gonna be super long, but the point is this: like John Gill, Geneva, they talk about, or even Expositor's Bible. Notice the dates BC. Then we have also Adam Clark. Once again, even I don't know who is this guy, F.B. Meyer. He just summarizes it like the rise and fall of empires. I don't know, this guy, it seems like all of a sudden he starts talking about the church, which is wrong. But the point is this, that like I said, I found a bunch of commentaries who agree with me. So verse 15, then the king of the north, Antiochus the Great, will come, pile up an assault ramp, like once again, if you're a dispensational premillennialist, Uh, assault ramp. What is this? I thought you might have to transform assault ramp into a tank or something, but I mean, modern, um, what's called modern ramps are like what for in a big warfare? Uh, it's pointless. Like we have nuclear missiles, we have drones, we have airplanes dropping bunch of bombs. It's like why we would need assault ramp all of a sudden? Well, because I believe that and notice pile up an assault ramp and capture a well well fortified city, and the forces of the south will not stand their ground, not even their choicest troops, for there will be no strength to make a stand. So Antiochus the Great, the king of Syria, should come into Syria and Phoenicia, which was the part of the kingdom of Egypt. He was to have by the league with Philip, king of Macedonia. Macedon. Verse 16. But he who comes against him will do as he pleases, and no one will be able to withstand him, and he will also stay for a time in the beautiful land with destruction in his hand. And I get this from Geneva Bible so that's interpretation by Geneva Bible. He shows that he will not only afflict the Egyptians but also the Jews, and will enter their country, of which he admonished them before, that they may know that all those things come by God's providence. Verse 17. And he will set his mind on coming with the power of his entire kingdom, bringing with him a proposal of peace, which he will be put into effect. He will also give him the daughter of women to ruin it, but she will that's Cleopatra the seventh. She just known as just a Cleopatra. Cleopatra. The seventh. They have bunch of Cleopatras. Because pretty much other 6 Cleopatras, they were not that interesting. But this Cleopatra, she's definitely have lots of history about her, so study, check her out. By the way, if you're lazy to read all of this, you can click this button right there and press play, and in Wikipedia is gonna read this for you, because like I said, it's a tons of information about both Roman Empire, well, before Rome became an empire, like Republic of Rome, then it's 7 Kings of Rome, then it's first triumvirate, then second triumvirate, along with Greek history from Alexander the Great till the end, till the collapse, like Cleopatra, or Cleopatra the Seventh. Will ruin it, but she will not take a stand for him or be on his side. Then he will turn his face on the coastlands and capture many, but a commander will put a stop to his taunting against him. Moreover, he will repay him for his taunting, so he will turn his face toward the fortresses of his own land. Once again, notice fortresses. Now it's all about bases and nuclear missiles. Who cares about fortresses? But he will stumble and fall and not be found. Then in his place one will arise, will now loud, will will allow an oppressor to pass through the jewel of his kingdom, yet within a few days he will be broken, though not in anger nor in battle. And that's Geneva Bible interpretation of this verse. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes, the glory of the kingdom, but within few days he shall be destroyed, and neither in anger nor in battle. That is, Seleucid will succeed his father Antiochus. So Seleucid, let me find this guy. So we have this guy, and there's actually a bunch of them. So yeah, that's could be problematic, by the way. So Seleucid, there was so many of them. Like I said, Seleucid Dynasty. Here we go. There's so many of them, and the last couple of was this ones, but the main one was Seleucid Nicator, the victor was the one who wins or conquers. Not by foreign enemies or battle, but by treason. Verse 21. And in his place a despicable person will arise, on whom the majesty of kingship has not been conferred, but he will come in a time of tranquility and seize the kingdom by intrigue. Who was Antiochus Epiphanes, who as is though was the occasion of Seleucidus his brother's death, and was a vile, cruel, and flattening nature, and fraudulent, his brother's son of the kingdom, and aspired the kingdom without the consent of the people. Well, technically we have tons of politicians like this throughout the world history, but once again I believe that should be at that time period. So let me show you the portrait of this politician, or even do they mention this Antiochus Epiphanes? I cannot find them. Now if I cannot find them, what we're gonna do is just gonna paste this, and kaboom, he's right there. He was born at 215 BC and died about 164 BC, about age of 50 or 51. Continue on. Verse 22. And the overflowing force will be flooded away from him and smashed, and also the prince of the covenant. By the way, people for some reason when they see word covenant, they already like, oh, it must be the new covenant or the old covenant. The covenant is basic word like agreement or contract. So whatever contract or agreement he had, or prince of the covenant, which in Geneva Bible that's how they will interpret, and with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, ye also the prince of the covenant. He shows that the great foreign forces will come to help the young son of Seleucid against his uncle Antiochus, and yet will be overthrown, meaning Ptolemaic, Potiphar's son, who was this child's cousin, and is here called the Prince of the Covenant, because he was the chief and all others followed his conduct. Verse 23. After an alliance is made with him, he will practice deception, and he will go up and gain power with a small force of people. Geneva Bible. And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. After the battle, the Philometor, Philometer, Google him for you, so you guys know what this guy look like. Oh, and it's a bunch of them. Sometimes Philometer and his there we go. Let me do this. Bam. Seems like Ptolemy the fourth. So he lived. So he actually reigned from. Let's see. Well, 180 to 164 BC. Like I said, do your own research. It's a ton of them. Continue on. For he came upon him by surprise, and when he did not suspect his uncle Antiochus at all. Verse 24. In a time of tranquility, he will enter the richest parts of the realm, and he will accomplish his fathers did not, nor his ancestors. He will distribute plunder, spoils, and possessions among them, and he will devise his schemes against strongholds, but only for a time. He shall enter peacefully even upon the fattest parts of the providence, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches, yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds even for a time, meaning in Egypt. He will content himself with a small strongholds for a time, but will always labor by craft to attain the chiefest. Verse 25. And he will stir up his strength and courage against the king of the south with a large army. So the king of the south will mobilize an extremely large and mighty army for war, but he will not stand, because schemes will be devised against him. And once again, how many kings did this in like throughout history? But of course, we're talking about that specific time period. Now we're switching to John Gill, because sometimes John Gill jumps around the timeline of history. All of a sudden, I remember he was talking about like a Ottoman Empire all of a sudden, and it's like no, stay. Like he I don't know why he did that, but that's what he trying to interpret. But at this verse 25, I kind of agree with him. And he shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. That is, Antiochus shall arose himself and extend his courage and gather a powerful army, and set out with them to fight with Ptolemy, Philometor, king of Egypt, This is his second expedition into Egypt, as is observed in the Apocrypha. Uh, by the way, like Maccabees, it's interesting historical book to read, but theology in it is bad. That's why it did not made it into the uh, Protestant canon, 66 books. We don't have Maccabees, but if you get a chance, read Maccabees 1, 2, 3, 4. It's interesting historical um, books, but theology in it is bad. Like, for example, in Maccabees talks about how the Jews said to Greeks that, hey, we are Jews of this, and Greeks, the Spartans, are of the same seed as of Abraham. I was like, you guys, what are you guys talking about? But it seems like they were trying to talk nice to the Spartans or Greeks to make them more, I guess, allied with them, being more likable, I guess. But politics, of course, stuff. But like I said, Maccabees is not inspired book, but it's interesting historical book. Continue on, verse 26. And those who eat his choice food will destroy him, and his army will overflow, but many will fall down slain. John Gill. Oh wait, is it verse 19? Okay. Let me double check. Verse 26. No, checking if. Oh my, I think I put the wrong verse on different. But 26. Yea, they that feed of the portion of his meal shall destroy him, those of his own household, his family's friends, his court courtiers and counselors, and the generals of his army. His destruction or the loss of the battle was either to be bad counselors they gave him, or to their desertion of him being corrupted by Antiochus. And it explains, once again, talks about the army of Antiochus, army of Ptolemy, Egypt, etc. Next, verse 27. And as for both kings, their hearts will be intent on evil, and they will speak lies to each other at the table, but it will not succeed, because the end is still to come at the appointed time. And once again, what is the end is it talking about? End of what? End of the world, end of the old covenant, or end of the probably Greek Empire? So let's see. John Gill again. And both those kings' hearts shall be to do mischief. Antiochus Epiphanes, king of Syria, and Ptolemy Polymeter, the king of Egypt, the latter being now in the hands of the former. Whether he was taken by him or voluntarily came to him is not certain, but those they seems to carry is very friendly to each other, yet at the same time they were contriving in their minds to do as much mischief to each other as they could. Next, verse 28. Then he will return to his land with much plunder, but his heart will be set against the holy covenant, and he will take action and then return to his own land. Again, John Gill writes, then shall he return to his land with great riches, that is, Antiochus with the spoils By the way, there's so many Antiochus and there's so many Ptolemies. It's so by the way, it's so confusing was to me to figure out who is who. That's why I kind of go by the different commentators, because, like I said, it's a lot. You pretty much have to have PhD in Greek history, especially ancient history, like starting probably like with some bunch of wars against between Athens and Sparta, so, and continue until the first century. So anyway, so that is Antiochus with the spoils of Egypt and the gifts of presents he had received there. So the author of the book of Maccabees says, and after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 140 and third year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels of thereof. First Maccabee chapter 1. That is of the heir of Seleucid, and the 40 or 6th year of his reign, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, not the covenant he had made with Ptolemy, which was fraudulent one, but the covenant between God and the Jews, whereby they. So once again, the book of Daniel is written pretty much about almost 600 years before Christ even came in. So just remember that. So God and the Jews, whereby they became a distant and particular people, having a religion, laws, and ordinances different from all others, for which reason they were hated by other nations, and particularly by Antiochus, and his heart was the more enraged against them at that time for the following reason: a false rumor being spread in Judea that Antiochus was dead. Jason took the opportunity to recover the office of high priest from his brother Menelaus. So, by the way, it's quite actually interesting story about those people. So, if you, let's see. So, it's in Second Maccabees, or you can with some just check out like Jason High Priest, get more information about him. But continue on. So Jason took the opportunity to recover the office of high priest from his brother Menelaus, and with 1,000 men took the city of Jerusalem, drove his brother into the castle, and slew many he took for his enemies. Antiochus, hearing of this, included the whole nation of the Jews had revolted from him, and therefore took Judea in his way from Egypt, in order to suppress his rebellion in the Apocrypha. Verse 29. At the appointed time he will return and come into the south, but this time it will not turn out the way it did before. So John Gill, at the time appointed he will return and come out. At the time appointed of God he shall return from Syria again to Egypt, which was the third expedition thither, and was occurred by the Alexandrians, setting up the brother of Ptolemy, Philometor, for king. Wherefore he hastened to Egypt with a large army under a pretense of restoring the disposed king, but in reality to seize the kingdom for himself. Verse 30. For the ships of Kittim will come against him, therefore he will withdraw in fear and will return and curse the Holy Covenant and take action. So he will come back and pay attention to those abandon the Holy Covenant. John Gill writes, for the ships of Kittim shall come against him. Ptolemy, king of Egypt, and his brother being Kittims or Shittim, most likely it's referring to Romans. So being come to an agreement, sending an embassy to the Senate of Rome to implore their help and assistance against Antiochus, who was prepared to besiege them in Alexandria, upon which they sent their ambassadors Sius, Paulius, Leonis, Sianis, Decimus, and Caesius Hostilius in the ship from Macedonia or Greece to Antiochus to require him to desist from making war upon Ptolemy, and that he quit the land of Egypt. See Numbers 24:24. Macedonia is called the land of Kittim in the Apocrypha. Interesting. I thought actually it was Kittim, ships from Kittim, that's referring to Rome, but interesting. Anyway, so sometimes some translators interpreters or teachers would interpret Kittim as Romans, some referring to the Greeks, but seems like that was Romans who were coming from Greek territory. So continue on, let's do this. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece. Interesting. Anyway, and his indignation against Holy Covenant, the Jews, God's covenant people, to whom he gratified his revenge, sending Apollonius with the army of 22,000 men, to whom he gave orders to slain. Honestly, like I said, next verse 31. Forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortress, and do away with the regular sacrifice, and they will set up the abomination of desolation. Geneva. The arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of the strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that makes desolation. A great faction of the wicked Jews will join the Antiochus, so called, by the way, so called because the power of God was not all diminished, even though this tyrant set up in the temple the image of Jupiter Olympius, and so began the corrupt the pure service of God. So there's actually a video Maccabi repair. I think it's like that. Yeah. You have time.
Numbered.
Check this video out. It's very interesting.
If you have
The origins of Hanukkah, Maccabee, anti-Hellenic rebellion. Check this one out. It's quite interesting. Next, verse 32. And by smooth words he will turn to godlessness those who act wickedly toward the covenant. By the people who know their God will be strong and take action. They forsook the law of God, the book of the covenant, and did things contrary to it, and particularly violated the covenant of circumcision, drawing on the foreskin and becoming uncircumcised, as well as rejected other ordinances of religious worship. The Jews by covenant were obligated to observe those apostates. Antiochus, corrupted by good words and fair speeches, by gifts and presents, and they became his tools to do his pleasure, and were his instruments to seduce the Jews to renounce their religion and give in to their idolatry, such as Jason, Menelaus, and others in Apocrypha. By the way, I think there's a couple of videos about this as well, like specifically that guy, Menelaus. Yep. Oh, Paris and something else. Jewish high priest. There we go. They have some of, actually they mention it as well, but yeah. This guy is actually pretty good one. Yep. He just mentioned this guy is pretty good actually. Bruce Gore, specifically about this topic. Other topics I disagree with him, so but check it out. Type in this right there and see it for yourself. Next, verse 33. And those who have insight among the people will give understanding to many, yet they will fall by the sword and by flame, by captivity and by plunder for many days. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many. Such has had a better understanding of divine things, that others had more light and knowledge in the sacred scriptures, in the law of God, and in his mind and will, and were capable of teaching others, and such as the Lord raised up among his people in the worst of times, in the times of great apostasy and declension, and those enabled to perform their duty to instruct the people in theirs, teach them what they should do and how they should behave, exhort them to retain the doctrines and ordinances of their holy religion, and to embrace the doctrines of and not embrace the doctrines and inventions of men, will worship superstition and idolatry. So they instructed the ignorant, strengthened the weak, and established the wavering. Such were Mattathias, the priest of Midian, and Eleazar, one of the chief scribes in the Apocrypha. So once again, Maccabees, second Maccabees. So verse 34. Now when they fall, they will be granted a little help, and many will join with them in hypocrisy. When the Jews shall be thus harassed and distressed by Antiochus and his armies, to the ruin of many by the several sorts of punishments inflicted on them, they shall be helped and eased a little by Attathias, a priest of Midian, and his 5 sons, commonly called Maccabees. And it goes on. Verse 35. And some of those who have insight will fall, to refine, purge, and cleanse them until the end time. What's the end time? End of what? I would argue end of the Old Covenant, or end of the, I guess, Greek times, I guess, because it is still to come at appointed time. So, not into sin or from the religion they profess and the doctrines they have not, they have an understanding of, have instructed others in, but into distresses and calamities for their steadfast adherence to the word, worship and ordinances of God. Verse 36. Then the king will do as he pleases, and he will exalt himself and boast against every god, and will speak dreadfully things against the God of gods, and he will be successful until the indignation is finished, because that which is determined will be done. Now we have this F.B. Meyer, the career of Antiochus Epiphanes in persecuting the people of God and plotting against Jehovah and his sanctuary is to describe as to suggest that it also includes further fulfillments, and especially that last Antichrist, of whom Antiochus was the prefigurative. By the way, I would say it's not Antichrist, but actually man of sin. Because Antichrist, there's many Antichrists, like for example the Jews who deny that Jesus is the Messiah. That would make them Antichrists. So continue on. Verse 37. And he will show no regard for the gods of his father, or for the desire of women, nor will he show regard for any other god, for he will boast against them all. So once again, F.B. Meyer, the career of Antiochus Epiphanes in persecuting the people of God and plotting against Jehovah and his sanctuary is so described as to suggest that it is okay. So accurately is the correspondence between the prophecies, the opponent, okay, Christianity, again, expositors. So Daniel 11:37, expositor's Bible. He will in fact make himself his own God, paying no regard by comparing to his national or local god, the Olympian Zeus, nor to the Syrian deity Tammuz, Adius, the desire of women. So some of you guys probably have no idea like about the Greek gods, so here we go. Olympian god, Olympian Zeus. This guy, or Greek gods. There's actually a bunch of them, and Zeus just one of many. You can research it for yourself. Or Tammuz. It's another interesting thing, I guess. You can research it for yourself. Gods of the Bible. They don't really show that. Tammuz. So we have Damur, Dimuzid, I guess. Whatever. You can research it for yourself, or commonly known as Tammuz. So read it for yourself. So verse 38. But instead he will honor a god of fortress, a god whom his fathers did not know. He will honor him with gold, silver, precious stones, and treasures. So Expositor's Bible, the only God to whom he shall pay marked respect shall be the Roman Jupiter, the god of the capital. To this god, to Jupiter Capitolinus, not to his own Zeus Olympius, the god of his Greek fathers. He shall erect a temple in his capital city of Antioch, and adorn it with gold and silver and precious stones. Verse 39. And he will take action against the strongest of fortresses with the help of a foreign god. He will give great honor to those who acknowledge him, and will make them rulers over the many, and will parcel out land for a price. That's again Expositor's Bible. And he shall deal with the strongest fortresses by the help of a strange god, namely the Capitolian Jupiter, Zeus Polius, and shall crown the strongholds of Judea with heathen colonists who worship the Tyrian Hercules, Mericlas, and other idols. To those heathen he shall give wealth and power. Verse 40. And at the end time the king of the south will wage war with him, and the king of the north will storm against him with chariots, horsemen, with many ships, and he will enter countries, overflowing them, and pass through. By the way, if you're dispensational premillennialist, do you see any chariots? Do you see any horsemen? Or do you see any ships? Why there's no helicopters? Why there's no airplanes? Or would you say that chariots are the tanks, then like horsemen, like I guess riding on Humvees and stuff, and then many ships? Okay, I guess you can use in modern warfare ships, but there's no horsemen, there is no chariot. And if you're saying that you have to take everything as literal, stick to the chariots and horsemen. So, but let me interpret this from Expositor's Bible, verse 40. So, but his evil career shall be cut short. Egypt, under the now allied brothers Philometor and Physcon, shall unite to trust at him. Antiochus will advance against them like a whirlwind, with many chariots and horsemen, and with the aid of a fleet. Let me pause this. We'll continue at verse 41. Daniel chapter 11, verse 41. He will also enter the beautiful land, and many countries will fall, but those will be rescued out of his hand: Edom, Moab, and the foremost of the sons of Ammon. Geneva Bible. he shall enter also into the glorious land. And by the way, glorious land referring to the Israel, or it seems like it. And many countries shall be overthrown, but those shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. See, the angel forewarns the Jews that when they shall see the Romans invade them, and that the wicked would escape their hands, that they should think that all this was done by God's providence, seeing that He warned them out of it so long before, and therefore He shall still preserve them. Verse 22. Then he will reach out with his hand against other countries, and the land of Egypt will not escape. So, Expositor's Bible, Daniel 11, verse 41 to 45. In the course of his march, he will pass through Palestine, the glorious land, with disastrous injury, but more Edom and Moab and the broom of the kingdom of Ammon shall escape his hand. Egypt, however, shall not escape, but by the aid of the Libyans and Ethiopians who are in his train, he shall plunder Egypt of its treasures. And then verse 23 till the end of the chapter. But he will gain control over the hidden treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and Libyans and Ethiopians will follow in his heels. But rumors from the east and from the north will terrify him, and he will go out with great wrath to eliminate and annihilate many. And he will pitch the tents of his royal pavilion between the seas and the beautiful holy mountain, yet he will come to an end, and no one will help him. That's it. That's the end of chapter